Here's a soothing list of 100 random historical facts to lull you into a relaxed state. 1. Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramid. 2. The shortest war in history was between Britain and Zanzibar on August 27, 1896. Zanzibar surrendered after 38 minutes. 3. Ancient Romans often used urine to wash their clothes, thanks to its ammonia content. 4. The first recorded recipe was for beer, dating back over 5,000 years in ancient Mesopotamia. 5. In the 1920s, some doctors recommended Coca-Cola as a treatment for headaches and fatigue. 6. Napoleon Bonaparte was once attacked by a swarm of rabbits. 7. Queen Victoria survived 8 assassination attempts. 8. Viking men wore makeup to enhance their features. 9. Oxford University is older than the Aztec Empire. 10. In ancient Egypt, servants were sometimes smeared with honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. 11. Julius Caesar was kidnapped by pirates who demanded a ransom. Caesar insisted they raise it as he was worth more. 12. George Washington never lived in the White House. 13. Ancient Persians made decisions while sober and then confirmed them while drunk, or vice versa. 14. President John F. Kennedy donated his entire presidential salary to charity. 15. Beethoven continued to compose music even after he became completely deaf. 16. The first Olympic Games held in Greece had only one event, a foot race. 17. Thomas Edison invented more than 1,000 things including the phonograph and light bulb improvements. 18. Albert Einstein was offered the presidency of Israel in 1952 but declined. 19. Ancient Romans enjoyed gladiator battles as early as 264 BC. 20. The guillotine was used in France for public executions until 1977. 21. In the Middle Ages, animals were often put on trial and punished for crimes. 22. The Eiffel Tower was almost dismantled and sold as scrap metal in 1909. 23. Abraham Lincoln was an accomplished wrestler. 24. In ancient Rome, the poor drank vinegar mixed with water. 25. Before erasers, people used breadcrumbs to remove pencil marks. 26. The Great Fire of London in 1666 destroyed most of the city, but only 6 people were recorded as dying. 27. Albert Einstein married his cousin Elsa. 28. Genghis Khan was responsible for the deaths of approximately 40 million people. 29. Ancient Egyptians invented toothpaste as early as 5,000 years ago. 30. The Leaning Tower of Pisa took 199 years to build. 31. Leonardo da Vinci could write with one hand and draw with the other simultaneously. 32. Iceland has no mosquitoes. 33. In the 18th century, pineapples were so valuable they were rented out as a status symbol. 34. Medieval knights believed wearing a lady's colors would bring them luck in battle. 35. Charlie Chaplin once lost a Charlie Chaplin look-alike contest. 36. Victorian doctors sometimes prescribed chocolate for sore throats. 37. Ketchup was sold as medicine in the 1830s. 38. Ancient Romans ate flamingo tongues as a delicacy. 39. In medieval times they had a dancing plague, where people danced for days without stopping. 40. Henry VIII had a court position just to wipe his face and hands. 41. Roman Emperor Caligula declared war on Neptune, the sea god, and ordered his soldiers to attack the waves. 42. The ancient Olympics banned women from competing and even watching. 43. A French woman named Jeanne Calment lived to be 122 years old. 44. Vikings often gave names to their swords. 45. Martin Luther, the Reformation leader, once threw an inkwell at what he believed was the devil. 46. Egyptian pharaohs wore fake beards as a sign of power, even female pharaohs. 47. During World War II, the British Army made inflatable tanks to deceive enemy forces. 48. Alexander the Great named more than 70 cities after himself. 49. Nikola Tesla was scared of pearls and wouldn't talk to anyone wearing them. 50. The Romans had a type of fast food called thermopolia. 51. Ancient Egyptians believed that cats were magical and brought good luck. 52. The first speeding ticket was issued in 1902. 53. Theodore Roosevelt had a pet badger named Josiah. 54. Ancient Greek athletes competed in the nude. 55. In medieval Europe, forks were considered devilish. 56. Ancient Romans dyed their hair using bird droppings and leeches. 57. The Great Wall of China took over 2,000 years to complete. 58. Shakespeare invented more than 1,700 words still used today. 59. The shortest war ever fought was between Britain and Zanzibar in 1896, lasting 38 minutes. 60. A 16th-century pope declared war on cats, believing they were associated with witches. 61. In ancient China, soldiers used to march to war carrying large banners. 62. The Mayans had a sport similar to basketball. 63. Cleopatra spoke 9 languages. 64. George Washington grew marijuana on his plantation. 65. The Aztecs practiced human sacrifice to appease their gods. 66. Winston Churchill was once hit by a car while crossing the street. 67. The first English dictionary was published in 1755. 68. Julius Caesar's last words were reportedly, "Et tu, Brute?" 69. The world's oldest recipe is for beer. 70. Queen Elizabeth I owned over 3,000 gowns. 71. The Romans built heated floors in their homes. 72. Einstein's brain was stolen after he died. 73. The Titanic was built in Belfast, Northern Ireland. 74. King Tut was buried with 143 pieces of jewelry. 75. Benjamin Franklin had 16 siblings. 76. Medieval Europeans believed garlic warded off vampires. 77. Alexander the Great was once crowned King of Asia. 78. Catherine the Great was a fan of Western European art and culture. 79. Julius Caesar once crossed the Rubicon, sparking a civil war. 80. Many Viking swords were made from melted meteorites. 81. John Adams was the first president to live in the White House. 82. The Statue of Liberty was a gift from France to the United States. 83. Ancient Egyptians believed the heart was the center of intelligence. 84. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest structure for 3,800 years. 85. Thomas Edison created a talking doll. 86. Amelia Earhart vanished in 1937. 87. The Wright brothers invented the first airplane. 88. The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous empire in history. 89. Abraham Lincoln was a licensed bartender. 90. Jingle Bells was originally written for Thanksgiving. 91. Henry VIII founded the Church of England. 92. Cleopatra married 2 of her brothers. 93. The Romans held gladiator battles in the Colosseum. 94. The Colosseum had a retractable roof. 95. The Roman Empire lasted more than 1,000 years. 96. The Great Wall of China is over 13,000 miles long. 97. Attila the Hun was feared across Europe. 98. St. Patrick supposedly drove the snakes out of Ireland. 99. The first ever novel was written in 1007. 100. The Eiffel Tower can grow 6 inches during summer due to metal expansion. 101. The first known contraceptive was crocodile dung, used by ancient Egyptians. 102. Vikings didn't wear horned helmets, that's a myth from opera costumes. 103. The Colosseum in Rome could hold up to 50,000 spectators. 104. The D in D-Day simply stands for day. 105. Marie Curie's notebooks are still radioactive and stored in lead-lined boxes. 106. The first successful parachute jump from a plane happened in 1912. 107. The Library of Alexandria was accidentally burned by Julius Caesar's soldiers. 108. Michelangelo hated painting the Sistine Chapel. 109. Genghis Khan's real name was Temujin. 110. Paper money originated in China during the Tang dynasty. 111. In ancient Egypt, the liver was considered the seat of the soul, not the heart. 112. Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. Native Americans had been there for thousands of years. 113. The shortest war in U.S. history was the Pig War against Britain in 1859. No shots were fired. 114. Marco Polo introduced pasta to Italy from China. 115. Pablo Picasso's full name has 23 words. 116. The first camera took 8 hours to expose a single image. 117. The world's oldest piece of chewing gum is over 9,000 years old. 118. Julius Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March. 119. During World War II, pigeons were used to deliver messages. 120. Ancient Greeks invented the alarm clock. 121. Stonehenge was once privately owned and sold for just £6,600. 122. King Tut's tomb had a dagger made from meteorite metal. 123. In 1830, the U.S. had a political party called the Anti-Masonic Party. 124. The Ottoman Empire lasted over 600 years. 125. The Ring-a-Ring-o' Roses nursery rhyme may refer to the Black Plague. 126. Ivan the Terrible accidentally killed his son. 127. The Mongols used silk shirts to protect against arrows. 128. Ancient Romans used powdered mouse brains as toothpaste. 129. At one point, Athens required all citizens to worship the goddess Athena. 130. In the Middle Ages, people believed that bathing was unhealthy. 131. Pope Francis was a nightclub bouncer before becoming a priest. 132. A medieval knight's suit of armor weighed about 60 pounds. 133. Ancient Greece held athletic competitions to honor their gods. 134. In ancient China, nails were sometimes grown long to show social status. 135. Before alarm clocks, people called knocker-uppers would tap on windows. 136. French fries were invented in Belgium, not France. 137. Aztec sacrifices sometimes involved removing a person's heart while it was still beating. 138. And Bullen had 6 fingers on one hand. 139. The Titanic's fourth funnel was fake, added for aesthetic balance. 140. The oldest wooden wheel in the world is over 5,000 years old. 141. Gladiators rarely fought to the death. 142. Hitler wanted to be an artist but was rejected from art school. 143. In ancient Egypt, beer was sometimes used to pay wages. 144. The first bicycle was known as the velocipede, and had no pedals. 145. Victorian-era people would take pictures of deceased loved ones as mementos. 146. In 1859, Charles Blondin crossed Niagara Falls on a tightrope. 147. The Statue of Liberty's full name is Liberty Enlightening the World. 148. Napoleon Bonaparte was actually of average height for his time. 149. Saint Nicholas, the basis for Santa Claus, lived in 4th century Turkey. 150. In 18th century England, it was considered fashionable to wear makeup made of lead. 151. Roman gladiators had fans like modern sports stars. 152. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be dismantled after 20 years. 153. A medieval knight's chain mail could contain tens of thousands of rings. 154. Winston Churchill was an honorary American citizen. 155. The Aztecs created chocolate, but it was usually bitter. 156. In medieval Europe there was a beard tax. 157. Women in ancient Rome dyed their hair red using lead-based dyes. 158. Queen Victoria was the first known carrier of hemophilia in the British royal family. 159. During World War II, balloons were placed over London to protect it from bombing. 160. In ancient Japan, samurai would fight in exchange for land. 161. Rome had public toilets and baths. 162. Giraffe neck bones are the same number as human neck bones. 163. George Washington had false teeth, but they weren't made of wood, they were made from human teeth. 164. French was England's official language for over 300 years. 165. In 16th century Turkey, coffee was considered an illegal drug. 166. Vikings were skilled navigators and often used the stars to travel. 167. In ancient Rome, brides wore yellow. 168. The invention of the zipper predates the invention of Velcro. 169. Catherine the Great of Russia had herself declared emperor, not empress. 170. During the Victorian era, arsenic was used in wallpaper and cosmetics. 171. The 1912 Olympics had an event for painting and sculpture. 172. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 was rumored to be started by a cow. 173. The typewriter was invented in 1868. 174. Knights' horses wore armor called barding. 175. In ancient Persia, kings would entertain guests by getting lions to fight each other. 176. The world's largest pyramid is not in Egypt but in Mexico. 177. Aztec warriors wore jaguar skins in battle. 178. Sliced bread was invented in 1928. 179. Ancient Egyptians wore makeup as both protection and fashion. 180. The Great Fire of London in 1666 led to a ban on wooden houses in the city. 181. There was a dancing plague in 1518 where people in Strasbourg danced uncontrollably for days. 182. The first commercial passenger flight in 1914 lasted only 23 minutes. 183. Ancient Romans believed gladiators' blood had healing properties. 184. Pablo Escobar's pet hippos escaped after his death, forming a wild population in Colombia. 185. In the Victorian era, dentures were sometimes made from deceased soldiers' teeth. 186. The first zoo in America was opened in Philadelphia in 1874. 187. Ancient Egyptian priests would pluck their entire bodies to be clean for the gods. 188. Mozart wrote his first composition at just 5 years old. 189. King Henry III kept a pet polar bear in the Tower of London. 190. The oldest "your mom" joke dates back 3,500 years to ancient Babylon. 191. French soldiers wore blue uniforms in World War I to make them easily recognizable. 192. The Greeks invented the first alarm clock around 250 BC using water. 193. The oldest recorded customer complaint is from ancient Mesopotamia, about copper delivery. 194. The Mona Lisa has no eyebrows. Da Vinci likely left them off intentionally or they faded over time. 195. Marie Antoinette's last words were an apology to her executioner. 196. The guillotine was once a popular symbol of justice in France. 197. Albert Einstein's Nobel Prize was for the photoelectric effect, not relativity. 198. The oldest known sock was made in Egypt around 300 to 500 AD and was split-toe to wear with sandals. 199. The first artificial limb dates back to 300 BC in ancient Egypt. 200. In ancient China, royal family members often grew their fingernails extremely long to show wealth. 201. Thomas Jefferson introduced macaroni and cheese to America. 202. The Leaning Tower of Pisa was never meant to lean, it began tilting during construction. 203. England's King of England title hasn't been officially used since 1707 when it became the United Kingdom. 204. George Washington was unanimously elected as the first U.S. president. 205. The word quarantine comes from the Italian quaranta giorni, meaning 40 days. 206. Napoleon kept a packet of poison on him in case he was captured. 207. The Roman Colosseum had elevators to lift animals to the arena floor. 208. The Spartans had a tradition of making sure their soldiers were clean-shaven before battle. 209. Charles Dickens was believed to have had epilepsy, and it influenced some of his characters. 210. The first traffic light was installed outside the British Parliament in 1868 but exploded shortly after. 211. In ancient Rome they had a god specifically for doors named Janus. 212. The first known prosthetic toe was found in an ancient Egyptian tomb. 213. Pope Gregory IV once declared war on cats, believing them to be in league with the devil. 214. Vikings used bones as ice skates. 215. Attila the Hun's burial site is unknown, as the river they buried him in was diverted to hide it. 179. Ancient Egyptians wore makeup as both protection and fashion. 180. The Great Fire of London in 1666 led to a ban on wooden houses in the city. 181. There was a dancing plague in 1518 where people in Strasbourg danced uncontrollably for days. 182. The first commercial passenger flight in 1914 lasted only 23 minutes. 183. Ancient Romans believed gladiators' blood had healing properties. 184. Pablo Escobar's pet hippos escaped after his death, forming a wild population in Colombia. 185. In the Victorian era, dentures were sometimes made from deceased soldiers' teeth. 186. The first zoo in America was opened in Philadelphia in 1874. 187. Ancient Egyptian priests would pluck their entire bodies to be clean for the gods. 188. Mozart wrote his first composition at just 5 years old. 189. King Henry III kept a pet polar bear in the Tower of London. 190. The oldest "Your Mom" joke dates back 3,500 years to ancient Babylon. 191. French soldiers wore blue uniforms in World War I to make them easily recognizable. 192. The Greeks invented the first alarm clock around 250 BC using water. 193. The oldest recorded customer complaint is from ancient Mesopotamia, about copper delivery. 194. The Mona Lisa has no eyebrows. Da Vinci likely left them off intentionally or they faded over time. 195. Marie Antoinette's last words were an apology to her executioner. 196. The guillotine was once a popular symbol of justice in France. 197. Albert Einstein's Nobel Prize was for the photoelectric effect, not relativity. 198. The oldest known sock was made in Egypt around 300 to 500 AD and was split-toed to wear with sandals. 199. The first artificial limb dates back to 300 BC in ancient Egypt. 200. In ancient China, royal family members often grew their fingernails extremely long to show wealth. 201. Thomas Jefferson introduced macaroni and cheese to America. 202. The Leaning Tower of Pisa was never meant to lean, it began tilting during construction. 203. England's King of England title hasn't been officially used since 1707 when it became the United Kingdom. 204. George Washington was unanimously elected as the first U.S. president. 205. The word quarantine comes from the Italian quaranta giorni, meaning 40 days. 206. Napoleon kept a packet of poison on him in case he was captured. 207. The Roman Colosseum had elevators to lift animals to the arena floor. 208. The Spartans had a tradition of making sure their soldiers were clean-shaven before battle. 209. Charles Dickens was believed to have had epilepsy, and it influenced some of his characters. 210. The first traffic light was installed outside the British Parliament in 1868 but exploded shortly after. 211. In ancient Rome they had a god specifically for doors named Janus. 212. The first known prosthetic toe was found in an ancient Egyptian tomb. 213. Pope Gregory IV once declared war on cats, believing them to be in league with the devil. 214. Vikings used bones as ice skates. 215. Attila the Hun's burial site is unknown, as the river they buried him in was diverted to hide it. 216. In medieval Europe, animals were sometimes put on trial and given punishments. 217. George Washington lost more battles than he won during the American Revolution. 218. The ancient Greeks used olive oil as soap. 219. The Sphinx of Egypt has a missing nose. Some believe it was shot off by Napoleon's soldiers, though this is disputed. 220. Thomas Edison once electrocuted an elephant to demonstrate the dangers of AC electricity. 221. An 18th-century chess-playing machine known as the Turk was secretly operated by a human. 222. Mozart once composed a piece called A Musical Joke, mocking other composers. 223. Elizabeth I owned a vast wardrobe with over 2,000 dresses. 224. During the Salem witch trials, witches were identified by witch marks like moles or birthmarks. 225. In ancient Rome, women dyed their hair using goat fat and beechwood ashes. 226. The first submarine attack occurred during the American Revolution in 1776. 227. Genghis Khan's Mongolian Empire covered nearly 12 million square miles. 228. The ancient Romans had a type of concrete that's stronger than modern concrete. 229. The Vikings used to bury their dead in boats. 230. During the Cold War, the CIA tried to use cats as spies by implanting listening devices in them. 231. Medieval surgeons used spider webs to help stop wounds from bleeding. 232. The inventor of the modern flush toilet, Sir John Harington, was Queen Elizabeth I's godson. 233. Napoleon kept a library with him during his military campaigns. 234. The 1904 Olympics in St. Louis included mud fighting as a spectator event. 235. Roman gladiators were usually slaves or prisoners of war. 236. The Mayans used chocolate as currency. 237. When the Mona Lisa was stolen in 1911, Picasso was initially a suspect. 238. The world's oldest purse dates back 4,500 years and was decorated with dog teeth. 239. Peter the Great of Russia introduced a tax on beards. 240. The ancient Egyptians had a calendar with 365 days but no leap years. 241. In medieval Japan, seppuku or ritual suicide was an honorable way to die. 242. A series of dance epidemics in medieval Europe caused people to dance uncontrollably. 243. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg is considered a turning point in history. 244. In ancient Persia, kings would cover their mouths with a cloth while speaking to the people to show respect. 245. Famous pirate Blackbeard tied fuses into his beard to scare his enemies with smoke. 246. The tallest structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years was the Great Pyramid of Giza. 247. During World War II, British spies used invisible ink made from semen. 248. King George III of England had a mental illness believed to be caused by porphyria. 249. The original Globe Theatre burned down in 1613 after a cannon misfire. 250. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, never called his wife or mother because they were both deaf. 251. The dancing plague of 1518 in Strasbourg caused people to dance for days until some died. 252. In ancient China, people believed that shaking a mirror would reveal a thief. 253. The first U.S. president to declare Thanksgiving a national holiday was Abraham Lincoln. 254. The term mad as a hatter originated from hat makers' exposure to mercury, which caused insanity. 255. During the Victorian era, people believed that a bite from a rabid dog could cause hydrophobia. 256. Nero, the Roman emperor, is rumored to have played the lyre while Rome burned, though this is likely a myth. 257. A samurai sword, known as a katana, was considered his soul. 258. During World War II, British soldiers were given chocolate bars laced with benzodrine to keep them alert. 259. During the 17th century, tulip bulbs in the Netherlands were worth more than gold. 260. The oldest toilet dates back to 4000 BC in Scotland. 261. The first artificial Christmas trees were made in Germany in the 1800s using dyed goose feathers. 262. Pirates wore earrings because they believed it improved their eyesight. 263. Julius Caesar was once captured by pirates and laughed when they asked for a ransom, telling them to demand more. 264. Albert Einstein's great passion was playing the violin. 265. The Aztec Empire was established in 1428 and lasted until 1521. 266. Christopher Columbus's voyages were funded by the Spanish monarchy. 267. Viking warriors believed that the Norse gods would grant them a place in Valhalla if they died bravely in battle. 268. The Rosetta Stone, discovered in 1799, helped scholars decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics. 269. The Eiffel Tower was initially criticized as an eyesore and almost dismantled after 20 years. 270. Roman Emperor Nero supposedly murdered his own mother. 271. In ancient Greece, the hemlock plant was used as a method of execution. 272. The Trojan War, immortalized by Homer, may have been based on real events. 273. The Parthenon in Athens was originally a temple to the goddess Athena. 274. In ancient Persia, there was a tradition of drinking wine to encourage honesty. 275. Thomas Edison held over 1,000 patents for inventions. 276. The Vatican has its own postal service. 277. Samurai were expected to adhere to a strict code of conduct called Bushido. 278. Pompeii was buried under volcanic ash in AD 79 when Mount Vesuvius erupted. 279. Cleopatra was the last ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. 280. There were once knocker-uppers in England who would knock on windows to wake people before alarm clocks existed. 281. Women in ancient Egypt could own property and initiate divorce. 282. The ancient Romans created heated bathhouses known as thermae. 283. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition was the first to circumnavigate the earth, although he didn't complete it himself. 284. The Taj Mahal was built by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. 285. The Vikings reached North America around 500 years before Columbus. 286. The word quarantine comes from the Italian phrase for 40 days, referring to the practice of isolating ships to prevent plague. 287. The Chinese invented gunpowder over 1,000 years ago. 288. The Little Ice Age occurred from the 14th to the 19th century and brought colder temperatures worldwide. 289. The bubonic plague wiped out an estimated 60% of Europe's population in the 14th century. 290. The last emperor of China, Puyi, was only 2 years old when he ascended the throne. Here's a continuation with 70 more fascinating historical facts. 291. The ancient Romans used urine as mouthwash due to its ammonia content, which helped clean teeth. 292. The first recorded instance of a prosthetic limb is an artificial toe from ancient Egypt. 293. Leonardo da Vinci spent 12 years painting the Mona Lisa's lips. 294. In 1815, the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia caused the year without a summer, leading to global cooling and crop failures. 295. The Wright brothers' first flight in 1903 lasted only 12 seconds. 296. Ancient Egyptians believed that the brain was useless and discarded it during mummification. 297. Before becoming a U.S. president, Abraham Lincoln was a licensed bartender. 298. The Aztecs practiced ritual human sacrifice as part of their religious ceremonies. 299. Cleopatra wasn't ethnically Egyptian, she was of Macedonian Greek descent. 300. The word robot comes from a Czech word meaning forced labor. 301. The world's largest pyramid by volume is the Great Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico. 302. In the 1800s, doctors used heroin as a treatment for coughs. 303. Ancient Greeks used lead to sweeten wine, despite its toxic effects. 304. Some ancient Roman roads are still in use today. 305. The oldest recorded joke, from Sumer around 1900 BC, is about flatulence. 306. Queen Elizabeth II was trained as a mechanic and truck driver during World War II. 307. Greek philosopher Diogenes once mocked Alexander the Great by saying, "Get out of my sunlight." 308. Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the U.S., was born in the Caribbean. 309. Unicorns are mentioned multiple times in the King James Bible, likely as a mistranslation. 310. Tiberius, a Roman emperor, had an underwater palace built in a secluded cave. 311. The Great Fire of London started in a bakery on Pudding Lane. 312. African samurai Yasuke served under the Japanese warlord Oda Nobunaga in the 16th century. 313. The longest reign in world history is held by King Louis XIV of France, who ruled for 72 years. 314. The guillotine was used in France until 1977. 315. Rasputin, the Russian mystic, survived several assassination attempts before finally being killed. 316. The D in D-Day does not stand for anything specific, it simply denotes day. 317. Some historians believe that George Washington's death was hastened by excessive bloodletting. 318. British soldiers were given tea rations during World War II to keep them alert. 319. Pablo Picasso could draw before he could walk. 320. In ancient China, wealthy people grew long fingernails as a status symbol. 321. Ivan the Terrible accidentally killed his son in a fit of rage. 322. Mark Twain was born and died during visits by Halley's Comet. 323. Roman Emperor Caligula is said to have tried to make his horse a consul. 324. Nero supposedly used Christians as human torches to illuminate his garden parties. 325. The shortest war in history was between Britain and Zanzibar in 1896, lasting 38 minutes. 326. George Washington's false teeth were not made of wood but of human and animal teeth. 327. The first Valentine was written from a prison by Charles, Duke of Orleans in 1415. 328. In 1849, New York State had 16 million oysters in its harbor. 329. The Shroud of Turin, believed by some to be the burial cloth of Jesus, has sparked scientific debate for centuries. 330. Ancient Egyptians believed that cats were magical and brought good luck. 331. The last recorded duel in France was fought in 1967. 332. French King Charles VIII died by hitting his head on a door frame. 333. Beethoven continued to compose music even after he went completely deaf. 334. During medieval times, children as young as 7 worked as apprentices. 335. Emperor Qin Shi Huang of China was buried with thousands of terracotta soldiers. 336. Mayan civilization declined centuries before the arrival of European colonizers. 337. Before alarm clocks, some people hired knocker-uppers to wake them up by tapping on their windows. 338. Isaac Newton once inserted a needle into his own eye to study light and color. 339. The world's first novel is considered to be The Tale of Genji, written by a Japanese woman, Murasaki Shikibu, in the 11th century. 340. King Tut's tomb was discovered by Howard Carter in 1922. 341. Medieval barbers performed surgery, tooth extractions, and even amputations. 342. The oldest known treaty is between Egypt and the Hittites, signed in 1259 BC. 343. Julius Caesar was once kidnapped by pirates and demanded they increase his ransom. 344. The largest book collection in the ancient world was in the Library of Alexandria. 345. The Great Wall of China is over 13,000 miles long. 346. In 19th century England, surgeons sometimes performed surgeries in their homes due to a lack of hospital space. 347. The ancient Egyptian city of Heracleion was submerged underwater for over 1,000 years. 348. The oldest known song with written lyrics is the Hurrian hymn No. 6 from ancient Syria. 349. During the Middle Ages, people believed in court dwarfs as good luck symbols. 350. Hitler's plan for Moscow was to wipe it out and create a man-made lake in its place. 351. Joan of Arc, burned at the stake, was just 19 years old at her death. 352. In ancient Rome, gladiators had endorsement deals and sold merchandise. 353. Vlad the Impaler inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. 354. The flag of Nepal is the only non-rectangular national flag. 355. In ancient Egypt, honey was used as a wound dressing. 356. The first artificial limb made of metal was created in 1536 for a wounded French soldier. 357. Ancient Rome had apartment buildings called insulae for the lower classes. 358. During the Renaissance, some surgeons believed that applying a salve to a sword would help the wounded person heal. 359. In ancient China, a form of toilet paper existed as early as the 6th century. 360. Ancient Greeks competed nude in the Olympic Games. 361. The first electric chair execution was performed in 1890 in New York. 362. The Tower of London housed animals such as lions and polar bears as royal pets. 363. Cleopatra once dissolved a pearl in vinegar to impress Mark Antony. 364. The Roman Emperor Augustus boasted about finding Rome a city of bricks and leaving it a city of marble. 365. In 17th century England, coffee houses were banned for fear of them inciting rebellion. 366. The Bloody Mary drink is named after Queen Mary I of England. 367. In ancient China, people used a type of crude toothpaste made from crushed bones and oyster shells. 368. Leonardo da Vinci wrote backward in his journals to keep his ideas secret. 369. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the same day, February 12, 1809. 370. The samurai sword, or katana, was traditionally passed down through generations. 371. In ancient Rome, purple dye was so expensive that only emperors could afford it. 372. The first commercial video game was Pong, released in 1972. 373. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were often buried with small figurines called ashapti, which were believed to do their work for them in the afterlife. 374. Queen Victoria survived at least 8 assassination attempts. 375. The Eiffel Tower can be 15 centimeters taller during hot summer days due to thermal expansion. 376. The smallest bones in the human body are in the ear, the malleus, incus, and stapes. 377. In 18th century Europe, wigs were so heavy that some people used head braces. 378. Marie Curie's research notebooks are still radioactive and require lead-lined boxes for storage. 379. The medieval longbow could penetrate armor from up to 250 yards away. 380. The Mayflower ship carried 102 passengers to America in 1620. 381. The Great Fire of London destroyed 70,000 homes, yet only 6 people were confirmed to have died. 382. Ancient Romans built aqueducts that could carry water over 50 miles. 383. Renaissance artist Michelangelo didn't think of himself as a painter, even though he painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. 384. The word bikini was named after Bikini Atoll, where nuclear tests were conducted. 385. The Gutenberg Bible, printed in the 1450s, is one of the most valuable books in the world. 386. In the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX declared that cats were associated with devil worship, leading to widespread cat killings. 387. Alexander the Great named more than 20 cities after himself. 388. Before the 19th century, dentures were sometimes made from teeth of dead soldiers. 389. Catherine the Great of Russia was actually German. 390. Julius Caesar introduced the Julian calendar, which remained in use until 1582. 391. The Romans had concrete that could set underwater. 392. Lewis Carroll, author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, was also a mathematician. 393. Egyptian mummies often had jewelry and scarabs in their wrappings for protection. 394. The longest war in history between the Netherlands and the Isles of Scilly lasted 335 years without a single shot fired. 395. Cleopatra spoke at least 9 languages including Egyptian, Greek, and Latin. 396. Napoleon Bonaparte was once attacked by a horde of rabbits. Here's another 50 fascinating historical facts for you. 398. Napoleon Bonaparte was afraid of cats, a condition known as ailurophobia. 399. The oldest university in the world is the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco, founded in 859. 400. The Colosseum in Rome could hold up to 80,000 spectators. 401. Bluetooth technology is named after a 10th century Viking king, Harold Bluetooth Gormson. 402. Native Americans used cranberry dyes to color fabrics and as medicine. 403. Attila the Hun's name is derived from a Gothic word meaning little father. 404. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest man-made structure in the world for nearly 4,000 years. 405. Ancient Egyptians made prosthetic toes for those who lost them. 406. The Great Wall of China wasn't built in one go, it was constructed over centuries. 407. Shakespeare invented over 1,700 words, including assassination and eyeball. 408. Ancient Romans used crushed mouse brains as toothpaste. 409. President William Howard Taft once got stuck in the White House bathtub. 410. The original Olympic Games in ancient Greece were a religious festival honoring Zeus. 411. The first known contraceptive was used in ancient Egypt, made from crocodile dung. 412. The oldest evidence of beer making dates back to around 7000 BC in ancient Iran. 413. There's a place in Canada named Dildo. 414. The Aztecs believed hummingbirds were reincarnations of fallen warriors. 415. Leonardo da Vinci was an illegitimate child and grew up without formal schooling. 416. In ancient Rome, it was considered unlucky to cut your hair on certain days. 417. Blackbeard, the pirate, braided his beard and set it on fire to intimidate enemies. 418. Eleanor Roosevelt held the first ever First Lady press conference in 1933. 419. The bubonic plague was so deadly that it killed roughly 60% of Europe's population. 420. The ancient Greeks had a form of a computer called the Antikythera mechanism. 421. The 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote in the U.S., was passed in 1920. 422. Vikings believed in a paradise called Valhalla, where warriors feasted with the gods. 423. Medieval knights often wore padded gambesons under their armor for protection. 424. Queen Elizabeth I would often avoid bathing, thinking it caused illness. 425. Pablo Picasso's full name has 23 words. 426. In medieval England, pigs were used to clean city streets by eating trash. 427. St. Patrick was actually born in Britain, not Ireland. 428. The British royal family changed its name to Windsor during World War I due to anti-German sentiment. 429. In World War II, soldiers used silly putty to clean dust from airplane instruments. 430. In the Victorian era, arsenic was used in makeup for pale skin. 431. Women in ancient Rome often used lead-based cosmetics, which were toxic. 432. In medieval Europe, people would cover themselves in crushed flowers to mask body odor. 433. The first known vending machine dispensed holy water in ancient Egypt. 434. In World War II, a Great Dane named Juliana was awarded a Blue Cross medal for extinguishing an incendiary bomb. 435. The Aztecs played a ball game called Tlachtli that sometimes resulted in human sacrifice. 436. The word salary is derived from salarium, the Latin word for salt, as Roman soldiers were partly paid in salt. 437. Napoleon once gave his soldiers brandy to cure their hangovers. 438. When tea was introduced to England in the 17th century, it was taxed heavily, making it a luxury. 439. The U.S. government accidentally mailed thousands of baby chicks to people during World War II due to a misprint in an ad, leading to confusion across the country. 440. Cleopatra reportedly dissolved one of the world's largest pearls in vinegar and drank it to show her wealth. 441. The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in history, spanning over 9 million square miles. 442. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million, which is about 2 cents per acre. 443. The famous Terracotta Army in China consists of over 8,000 life-size soldiers, all unique in appearance. 444. During the Middle Ages, animals were put on trial and sometimes sentenced to death for crimes. 445. The ancient Romans had a calendar with only 10 months, later adding January and February. 446. The Leaning Tower of Pisa took 199 years to build due to construction interruptions. 447. Egyptian pharaohs would often marry their sisters to keep the royal bloodline pure. 448. Marco Polo introduced the concept of paper money to Europe after his travels in China. 449. The term Celtic was popularized by the Romans to describe the tribes of Central Europe. 450. King Henry VIII's armor had a waist circumference of 54 inches, indicating his large size. 451. The first recorded indoor ice skating rink opened in London in 1876 and was called the Glaciarium. 452. King Tutankhamun's tomb was found nearly intact in 1922, containing over 5,000 artifacts. 453. Ancient Persians would debate important decisions twice, once sober and once while drunk. 454. Peter the Great of Russia imposed a beard tax to encourage a clean-shaven look. 455. Queen Elizabeth I had over 3,000 dresses, which she rarely wore more than once. 456. During World War I, the British Army used carrier pigeons to deliver messages across enemy lines. 457. In medieval England, being overweight was considered a sign of wealth and power. 458. The Forbidden City in China has 9,999 rooms because the number 9 symbolized longevity. 459. During Prohibition, U.S. citizens used medicinal alcohol prescriptions to legally drink. 460. Ancient Egyptians worshipped scarab beetles, associating them with the god Khepri. 461. The shortest U.S. president, James Madison, was only 5 feet 4 inches and weighed about 100 pounds. 462. The Library of Alexandria was one of the largest libraries of the ancient world but was lost in a series of fires. 463. Genghis Khan exempted teachers and religious figures from paying taxes. 464. The ancient Olympics in Greece initially only featured a single foot race. 465. The last emperor of China, Puyi, ended up working as a gardener after his abdication. 466. The 1814 eruption of Mount Tambora caused the year without a summer, leading to widespread crop failures. 467. Vikings believed a rainbow was a bridge connecting the earth to the heavens. 468. The word boycott comes from Charles Boycott, a landlord whose tenants protested against him. 469. In the 16th century, some people wore plague doctor masks with long beaks filled with herbs to ward off disease. 470. George Washington's wooden teeth were actually made from various materials, including hippo ivory. 471. The Aztecs were among the first civilizations to introduce chocolate as a drink. 472. Alexander the Great named more than 20 cities after himself. 473. There's a myth that Catherine the Great of Russia tried to lift herself onto her throne with a crane to avoid walking. 474. Benjamin Franklin invented the lightning rod, the glass harmonica, and bifocal glasses. 475. The Sumerians developed one of the earliest forms of writing called cuneiform. 476. The oldest musical instruments ever discovered are flutes made from mammoth ivory, dating back 40,000 years. 477. Thomas Edison, known for inventing the light bulb, also invented a ghost telephone to contact the dead. 478. In medieval times, people believed that eating tomatoes could cause illness and death. 479. Julius Caesar was assassinated on March 15, known as the Ides of March, by a group of senators. 480. The original Olympic Games banned women from attending, and any caught attending could be executed. 481. The word tsunami comes from Japanese, meaning harbor wave. 482. In ancient Rome, wealthy citizens would often vomit between courses to eat more. 483. The first self-propelled vehicle was designed by Leonardo da Vinci in 1478. 484. The first artificial heart transplant was performed on a 61-year-old man in 1982. 485. Al Capone, infamous Chicago gangster, opened one of the first soup kitchens during the Great Depression. 486. During the Renaissance, artists were often commissioned by the Catholic Church to create religious art. 487. The Eiffel Tower was originally intended to be dismantled and sold as scrap metal after 20 years. 488. In the 17th century, tulip bulbs in the Netherlands were as expensive as houses, leading to tulip mania. 489. Queen Victoria was the first British monarch to ride a train. 490. Ancient Chinese soldiers used kites to scare enemies and send messages. 491. Viking women held more rights than many other women in Europe during their time, including the right to divorce. 492. In 1911, the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre and went missing for 2 years. 493. The Boston Tea Party protesters disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians to avoid recognition. 494. Winston Churchill won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1953. 495. The phrase "crossing the Rubicon" refers to Julius Caesar's irreversible decision to start a civil war. 496. The Kingdom of Scotland and the Kingdom of Norway were united by marriage in 1266. 497. The T. Rex lived closer in time to humans than it did to the Stegosaurus. 498. Leonardo da Vinci's painting, the Mona Lisa, is protected by bulletproof glass at the Louvre Museum. 499. Roman gladiators were primarily slaves or prisoners of war forced to fight. 500. The oldest known wheel is from Mesopotamia, dating back to around 3500 BC.